Congratulations, FIFA did it. They took the biggest tournament on the planet and decided to risk everything. And if you think this is just another World Cup, you might want to watch this until the end. Also, if you actually care about football beyond the surface, hit like now, because this story gets uncomfortable. For decades, the World Cup felt untouchable, almost sacred, a tournament where every single match carried real weight, where 32 teams already felt like the perfect number to concentrate talent, drama, and history into a few weeks that stopped the world. It was simple, direct, almost perfect in its essence. And maybe that's exactly why no one expected the biggest change in history to arrive so quietly, almost disguised as progress. In 2026, for the first time, it won't be 32 teams, it will be 48, a 50% increase. The number of matches jumps to 104 games, 40 more than the 2022 World Cup. 3 host countries, a tournament bigger than anything we've ever seen. It sounds massive. It sounds historic. It sounds impossible to fail, which, historically, is exactly when things start going wrong. Because when something grows too fast, the question stops being, how big can it get? And becomes, what could break in the process? FIFA calls this evolution, but here's the part nobody talks about. Are we watching football evolve, or the exact moment it starts losing control? And maybe the most surprising part is how few people are actually questioning it. Before any expansion, the World Cup had something rare: balance. 32 teams, a format refined over decades, where quality and intensity coexisted almost perfectly. Every match mattered, every mistake had consequences. There was no room for excess. And that's exactly why it worked. Think about the last World Cup. How every game felt like it actually meant something. That tension, that pressure, that's what made it different. This format created unforgettable moments, shocking eliminations, games that froze entire nations. The World Cup wasn't just a tournament, it was pure pressure from start to finish. And maybe because it worked so well, changing it felt almost unnecessary, even risky. But then came the decision. FIFA announced the expansion to 48 teams. The message was strong: inclusion, global growth, more opportunities for nations that never had a real chance. On the surface, it sounded impossible to argue against. But at the same time, another layer started to emerge. More teams mean more matches. More matches mean more broadcasting, more sponsorships, more billions flowing into the system. The projected revenue for the 2026 World Cup is expected to surpass any previous edition. And this is where things start to get interesting. Was this really about football, or everything surrounding it? The idea was simple, and at the same time, enormous. For the first time ever, 3 countries will host the tournament together: the United States, Mexico, and Canada. A massive territory, dozens of cities, distances that have never been part of the World Cup reality. This is no longer just a tournament, it's a continental-scale event. And along with that scale comes volume. 104 matches, a longer calendar, more content, more broadcasts, more global presence. The promise is clear. This will be the most watched and most profitable World Cup in history. For the first time, nations that once stood on the outside now have a real shot. New flags, new audiences, new heroes emerging from places no one expected. And for a moment, it actually feels like this is exactly what football needed. But this is how big ideas usually begin, looking too good to question. Because the bigger the stage, the harder it becomes to control what happens on it. And this is where things start to get weird. For a moment, everything makes sense. 48 teams mean more stories, more cultures, more styles of play colliding inside one tournament. The chances of upsets increase. Smaller nations finally have a real opportunity to make history, and that creates something powerful: global connection. The World Cup becomes less about elite dominance and more about inclusion, more democratic, more open. And with that, the reach grows even further. More games across more time zones, more coverage, more people watching. You almost start to believe this could be the greatest World Cup of all time. But here's the problem. When everything looks perfect, it usually means you haven't seen the cost yet. And this is the point where most people stop paying attention. But this is exactly where things start to fall apart. If you've made it this far, drop a like, because now we get into the part nobody explains. 104 matches. That changes everything, because the more games you have, the less each one might matter. The World Cup has always been special because every match felt decisive. Now, there's a real risk of games that simply don't carry that same tension. The new format also raises serious questions. With more teams and more spots available, there's a real possibility of teams advancing without facing true high-level competition. Matches that don't feel as meaningful as they should. And in the middle of all this are the players. Already overloaded calendars, intense seasons, accumulated fatigue. Now add long-distance travel between countries, time zone shifts, constant climate changes. At this point, it starts to feel less like a football tournament and more like a survival test. And when players aren't at their peak, the quality drops. Logistics become a silent but massive issue. Huge travel distances, constant relocation, adaptation challenges. A level of physical and mental demand the World Cup has never tested before. And now the question isn't theoretical anymore. In trying to create the biggest World Cup in history, did FIFA build something too big to actually work? But here's the twist nobody expected. What if this problem is exactly what football needed? Because while some see excess, others see opportunity. More teams mean more stories, more unknown players stepping into the spotlight, more chances for the unexpected to happen. Unpredictability could reach an entirely new level, and maybe that's what keeps football alive, the possibility of the impossible. There's also something else. A longer tournament allows narratives to develop, teams evolving throughout the competition, rivalries forming in real time, underdogs growing into contenders. And when you look at it from this angle, what looked like chaos starts to feel like innovation. But let's not ignore reality. Not every experiment ends well. The 2026 World Cup is more than just a tournament. It's a global test, and there's no backup plan. If it works, FIFA reshapes football forever. This format becomes the new standard. More teams, more games, more revenue, and a completely different version of the World Cup becomes reality. But if it fails, there's no hiding it. This won't just be a bad tournament. It becomes a historical mistake. And the most intense part is that no one truly knows what will happen. Because in football, everything changes on the pitch. Small details turn into massive consequences. And when the entire world is watching, there are no second chances. In the end, maybe this was never really about numbers. Maybe it's about something deeper. What actually makes the World Cup special? The size or the weight of each moment? Because the 2026 World Cup promises more of everything. More teams, more games, more stories. But hidden inside all that more, there's a silent risk of less. Less intensity, less impact, fewer unforgettable moments, or maybe the opposite. Maybe this becomes the tournament that creates new legends, new nations rising, a new era of football. And now, the decision isn't in FIFA's hands anymore. It's in yours. So now I want to hear from you. Not just opinions, real takes. Is this the future of football, or the beginning of something we can't undo? Drop your answer in the comments, because this debate is bigger than it looks. And if you enjoy this kind of deep football storytelling, subscribe, because we're just getting started.